Again, very grateful for the opportunity to represent my grandfather, Donald C. Sloan, and our family in this prestigious event. I'm grateful for BYU. It is a wonderful university. It's one that I attended myself, as did my siblings and my mother. A few thoughts about my grandfather. He died when I was very young, but the memories that I have of Grandpa Sloan are very tender and very fond indeed. My grandfather was a great musician. That's not something that's well known. He played the piano beautifully. I can remember many times as a young man, well, not a young man, a boy actually, during Christmas time, my grandfather would make, with my grandmother, a flight from Portland to San Francisco, where we lived, and he would play the piano, wonderful Christmas hymns and songs well into the evening, well past my bedtime, and I can assure you that it was difficult enough trying to get to sleep thinking about Santa Claus without hearing that beautiful music, but it certainly brought wonderful memories to me and still does. My grandfather, above all, loved his family, and he loved his grandchildren. I don't think there was a time that I can remember, whether it was the time that I graduated from kindergarten or received my Eagle Scout Award, my grandfather was there. And if he wasn't there, he would send letters to congratulate me. Grandpa was a relatively firm man. He was born in 1905. That was a time that was very different than that of today. He was very disciplined. He was very focused. He grew up in adversity. If you can think of the experiences people had back then, such as the sinking of the Titanic, that great disaster, World War I, the great war to end all wars, the 1918 pandemic, the Spanish flu, a lot of parallels there with what we're experiencing now. And of course, the Great Depression that was kicked off by the 1929 great stock market crash. All of these things, I think, formulated my grandfather's discipline and his focus. Grandpa was a very positive thinking man. He was one who would never let adversity get in his way. He would look at rocks and mountains in the road as nothing more than pebbles to be hurdled. And that was the kind of man he was. My grandfather finished a successful LDS mission in the eastern states and immediately went back to school to finish his degrees. And as a part of that, he also met the love of his life, which was my grandmother, Clarice, and they were later married. And it was about that time when the 1929 stock market crash hit. Well, how interesting it is that my grandfather decided to go into the investment and brokerage industry at that time. In fact, he convinced his wife, he was quite a convincing person, that they should start a brokerage within months of the great crash. His friends and business associates thought he was an idiot, but he knew what he was doing. And even with that great difficult time, he saw opportunity and adversity and is able to parlay that into a successful business that lasted well into the 1990s. Again, my grandfather gave us so many different examples of overcoming adversity and looking at adversity and challenge as opportunity. He was a risk taker. There was nothing about fear that he understood or accepted, and he took many risks. My grandfather was a great salesperson. He was a wonderful salesperson. There was a time when my grandfather, who at that time was the official or the president of the Royal Rosarian Club, which was all about roses in Portland, Oregon, and he decided to do something crazy and bold. This was during the peak of the Cold War. And he decided to send some of Portland, Oregon's most beautiful roses to none other than Joseph Stalin, the dictator of the Soviet Union, who had so much hatred toward our country. And as we all know, that was a very difficult time. But my grandfather's intent was very simple, and it was very direct. He wanted Joseph Stalin to lay down his arms. He wanted him to reconsider. He wanted him to look toward world peace. And while I do not recall of any reply that came to my grandfather from Joseph Stalin, I do know that many newspapers and news institutions, as well as governments throughout the world, took notice to what my grandfather did. Again, this was the man he was. My grandfather loved, above all, public speaking. He was a great orator. He was eloquent in everything he did. He knew how to communicate. Above all, he knew how to listen. As a great salesperson, you cannot be such unless you understand how to develop relationships, and that comes through great listening and learning of others and seeking the best for others. And that was, again, a characteristic of my grandfather. He was privileged to lead many organizations and so forth that gave him great access to wonderful leaders throughout the world. But it was his public speaking and his ability to communicate, his ability to connect with people that really gave him the success of his life. Grandpa Sloan had the opportunity and the privilege to travel throughout his life and had the opportunity to meet and develop relationships with many foreign dignitaries, even kings. He had a wonderful opportunity to meet with King George VI of England in Buckingham Palace, where he presented a beautiful rose, again as a rosarian. It was a remarkable life that he lived. It was a short life. He died at a younger age. He was only 63 when he passed away. But of all the skills that and the experiences that helped him to be successful, it was his public speaking that really was at the center of that success, which led him, because of his love not only for public speaking, but also for the youth of the church and young people everywhere. This led him to provide this wonderful endowment that now bears his name here at Brigham Young University, for which we are so proud, that hopefully has contributed something to the wonderful efforts of those who now are watching this video, and the wonderful professors and teachers who have given their time and put so much priority and focus on helping young people to communicate as effectively as possible. My grandfather, were he here today, would be very proud of each one of you. I know that there would be tears in his eyes. That was the kind of man he was. His love would have been expressed in many different ways, probably even by hugging everyone here, although during this pandemic that's not a possibility. But I want you to know how much my grandfather loves you, how much he believes in you, how much we believe in you. Congratulations on your efforts, students. Congratulations on wanting and doing everything you can to set yourselves apart to be great influencers and leaders in this world. We all know how badly and how desperately we need such leaders. It is your efforts, it is your focus, it is your attention to this kind of skill that will set you apart indeed, and we're proud of you. On behalf, again, of my grandfather Sloan and of our family, please know how much we love you, how grateful we are for your efforts. Thank you.